We, sovereign people of this world, do declare that we will not be slaves, not even for those that would rule us by force. We will no longer sit idle while our fellow human beings are subjected to oppression and tyranny. We will stand united with those that support the idea that all individuals are sovereign and equal, that being controlled by force and/or deception is contrary to human dignity. We are that we are, standing under no one, on, or, of this world. We will not submit to unjust wars, nor to any taxes, subjugation through wage slavery and neo-feudalism, propagandistic educational systems, deceptive media, private monetary systems, lying unaccountable representation in communal matters, nor to any other contracts for which we have not personally approved. We pledge that we will not resort to the underhanded and even outright evil tactics of our enemy, i.e. or that of some of our allies, but will resist by non-compliance to the directives of those trying to be our master. We will make our decision known by speaking out to all who will listen. Consistent with our belief that the legislation and orders being enforced against ourselves are strictly unconstitutional, and nonetheless a violation of the natural order, we now declare. Whereas any curtailment of the universal right to keep and bear arms, from armors to defensive tools including weapons, is a direct attack on Americans' freedom to secure and defend ourselves, and constitutes an affront to our numerous and indefinite rights, including to make our own security and defense decisions. And, whereas arms control violates the fundamental right of people and business to decide who they will engage in free trade with, and on what terms such trade is permitted. And, whereas present laws infringe against or justified rights surrounding revolution and the dissolution of tyrannical government, ring those who plan on overturning the institutional injustice of the present system are considered to be insurrectionists guilty of sedition, and even terrorists for the willingness to repel the assault on our freedoms and very lives and well-being, far beyond protecting our mere pursuit of happiness, through the use of defensive force including maximum retaliation with minimal incitation. And, whereas the precarious nature of the false two-party dichotomy and a constitution with no real teeth to self-execute and ensure that usurpers and despots are unable to exercise any powers which offend against the rights of people in pursuit of natural justice, we declare that we refuse to be ruled by a system that does not represent our best interests and which is opposed to our very will as a free and sovereign people. We pledge and promise not to go along with factitious edicts. We are presenting the new Declaration of Independence with grievances in accordance with the United States Constitution and current U.S. Code of Law, and taking our independence while simultaneously instituting a greater security for our safety and happiness, along with our liberty and property, defense of sovereignty and justice. We affirm and pledge that we will uphold and defend the Bill of Rights to the Constitution of the United States, and any enhancement to the sacred charters of liberties. We are declaring our willingness and our ability to no longer support the current administration's decisions, and to expose our discontent with prior administrations as well. We will continue to remain who we are and not submit to illegitimate authority, and strive to create our own free nation. We are asserting our stance under redress of grievances, petitioning for relief or aid, or even merely recognition by the world of the scope and extent of the problems we face. We will continue to obey natural laws in our communities which enshrine rights and pursue justice, and the justly instituted civil governance of our respective states and/or nations. We are affirming that in good faith and trust, that we are done giving them moral and material support. We openly recognize that we have shared the intent and the spirit of the original Declaration of Independence. Rather than be forced to obey, submit, comply, die, we will, through our good credit, pay in blood, sweat, and tears, to protect the tree of liberty, and we promise never to engage with the apparatus of government at someone else's expense of rights justice. If we cannot afford to die at a certain time, we promise to make our remaining life worth living, and protect our people, as well as, if necessary, to die quietly and with our dignity and our rights intact. We are declaring a moral and political separation from the current ruling administration and the policies it is currently enacting, which is diminishing our liberties, and conscientiously object to its perpetuation in the current state of such decay. These times have brought upon us a necessity to declare a moral and political independence from the government, and to affirm our spiritual, mental, and physical resistance to all forms of usurpation, despotism, and tyranny. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for a people to advance from that subordination in which they have hitherto remained, and to assume among the powers of the earth the equal and independent station to which the laws of nature entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to moral separation and the change. As citizens of the great, social, democratic Republic of the Cascadia of sovereign people, we find it necessary, due to amoral and sometimes immoral decisions made by our elected officials, to dissolve our moral union with the present administration, senators, and representatives. Our view is that the several branches of federal, state, and even local government have not upheld their oath of office to support, protect and defend the Constitution of the United States, and of our state, and have themselves infringed on the protection of our rights, our happiness, peace, prosperity, and our safety, as a people. When a government has ceased to protect the lives, liberty, and property of the people, from whom its legitimate powers are derived, and for the advancement of whose happiness it was instituted, and so far from being a guarantee for their inestimable and inalienable rights, becomes an instrument in the hands of evil rulers for their oppression. When the federal republican constitution of their country, which they have sworn to support, no longer has a substantial existence, and the whole nature of their government has been forcibly changed, without their consent, from a restricted federative republic, composed of sovereign states, to a consolidated central military despotism, in which every interest is disregarded but that of the army and the priesthood, both the eternal enemies of civil liberty, the ever-ready minions of power, and the usual instruments of tyrants. When, long after the spirit of the Constitution has departed, moderation is at length so far lost by those in power, that even the semblance of freedom is removed, and the forms themselves of the Constitution discontinued, and so far from their petitions and remonstrances being regarded, the agents who bear them are thrown into dungeons, and mercenary armies sent forth to force a new government upon them at the point of the bayonet. There comes a time when a governed people must assess their government and hold it accountable if it is determined that their government is operating in direct opposition to the freedoms and protection of the people it was originally purported to serve. If, by this assessment, it is determined that the government is not functioning on behalf of the people, but that it instead is found to be hostile to its people and their freedoms, then those same people of their nations have a right and duty to take a stand and declare that government to be illegitimate and no longer binding on the people it has betrayed. We the good people of the world declare that this is now our time to take a stand and reform our governments with a return to the representational of the people, constitutionally bound, form of government upon which, for example, the United States of America was originally formed and intended to remain under. We declare the current government to be illegitimate and formally declare it them as being adverse to the people it they is are by design supposed to protect and serve. It they is are a government that now serve private, foreign interests and international banking families, and are pushing policies and procedures that are adverse to the freedoms of the people who are subject to its tyranny. The several governments of earth are detrimental to, rather than the champion of, the good people of the world. They no longer protect the sovereignty of their people, but rather have become an agent of change, resulting in the demise of freedom through covert and open operations that have attacked the infrastructure on multiple fronts of global governance, Hegelian dialectic processes. In the United States, Congress in general has failed to do their duty and represent and protect the people, and has allowed abuses by various presidents and vice presidents, and those under their influence, all of them serving private elite interests working against the benefit and protection of the United States and its people. These abuses are at once criminal and treasonous, and those in current power who have been progenitors of these abuses or who have allowed these abuses to be carried out should be tried and held accountable for their offenses against the Constitution and people who have and continue to suffer under their tyranny. It is our right as independent nations of people, and our goal, to immediately end the current and illegitimate form of tyrant is represented by the current government and to actively bring about a return to the formal and rightful government which have been undermined, reinstating the proper checks and balances and the return to a legitimate representative to the people form of government. In the age of reason we the people cannot accept the current political, economic, and financial systems that are used to govern the world by a privileged elite. Tyrannical forces that are employed by our governments and imposed on the people through strategic psychological oppression must cease to exist. The proximity of our ultimate fate as a species has caused us to re-examine some of the truths that we hold to be self-evident. All persons are created by nature, and are curiously and wonderfully made. Since the dawn of civilization, the history of mankind has been framed by the struggle between those who desire freedom and those who seek to restrict it. This struggle has spanned thousands of years, led to countless wars, revolutions, and other forms of civil strife all across this planet, and yet there has never been a time when the freedoms and natural-born rights of all of humanity have been so gravely in danger. In this technologically advanced age, where several nations possess arsenals of weapons capable of destroying the entire planet, the greatest threat to the survival and continued progress of we the several independent peoples of the world is not nuclear weapons. Rather, the greatest threat to the life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness of all mankind is the ever-increasing power of oppressive governments around the world, the most heinous and dangerous of them cloaked in the guise of democracy and freedom, when the reality couldn't be further from the truth. When we analyze humanity's past, we find that it has always been the case that the most prosperous societies have also been the most free. For it is only when men and women are free that they can prosper and fulfill their full potential. Certain individuals, some bearing quills, and others arms, or both, have taken, and will take up, upon themselves this aforementioned universally endowed right. During the span years, they have worked to defeat the injustices from those of illegitimate authority, empowering themselves unto a new land and identity away from tyranny. Through frustrations with taxes, unjust imprisonment, and thievery of natural rights and justice guaranteed to every citizen, they have further marked down constitutions for free, seemingly unassailable forms of constitutional democracies and republics, where every person has a chance to achieve their own individual definition of liberty and dream to the realm of impossibility. However, at the same time, these very protecting documents, on which the government of, for example, the United States of America, was founded, have been utterly decimated and eroded by the very people elected to guard that revered and serious honor. In time other governments followed suit, each by their own routes and strategies, manipulated by agendas that are bigger than themselves. Guided by the warped ideals of those individuals without, who knew not what true liberty stands for, these legislators, judges, and even presidents, and their cohorts seek more to live their lives in comfort and avarice on the backs of those they constantly swindle. They have created falsehoods to tear down the very fabric of freedom, often at the expense of lives, and always at the expense of the potential for good in the universe. We hold these truths to be inviolable and undeniable, that all people are naturally equal and independent, and that from their nature they derive rights inherent and unalienable, among which are the preservation of life and health, liberty, freedom and autonomy, independence, self-security and self-defense, privacy, property, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these ends, governments are instituted among people, deriving their just powers from the consent of its citizens. When, in consequence of such acts of malfeasance and abduction on the part of the government, anarchy prevails and civil society is dissolved into its original elements, and that the government shall become disengaged or destructive of the people's needs to these ends, in such a crisis, the first law of nature, the right of self-preservation, the inherent and unalienable right of the people to appeal to first principles, and take their political affairs into their own hands in extreme cases, enjoins it as a right towards themselves and a sacred obligation to their posterity and fellow countrymen to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, calculated and laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form, as to them shall seem most likely to rescue them from impending dangers in order to effect their safety, liberty, happiness, and secure their general welfare. Prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes, and accordingly, all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable, than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. However, when a long train of abuses and usurpation, begun at a distinguished period, and pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to subject them to arbitrary power, it is their right, it is their duty, to throw off such government and to provide new guards for securing their future freedom and prosperity. Such has been the patient sufferance of these people, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to expunge their former systems of government. The history of their present rule is a history of unremitting injuries and usurpation, among which no one fact stands single or solitary to contradict the uniform tenor of the rest, all of which have in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over we the people. With these eloquent words and the ideas they represent to guide their hearts, Ghost Liberty, along with the other founding fathers, along with this new generation of naturally free persons, in favor of sovereignty as a person, inspired by the founding fathers of the original United States as well as their own inspirations, as in the interests of securing our freedom and liberty, declare a war against what are at this time the most powerful empires of the world. Even though an almost insurmountable task lays ahead of us, we shall not shirk our duty because we know that liberty is more important than even life itself. In the end it shall be our passion for the cause of freedom and justice that shall enable us to defeat the various empires of the world, and establish our free and prosperous new nations. Although a similar, and in many ways even greater task awaits us, unlike the founding fathers of the United States, we in our pursuit of our core principles are opposed not only by many overseas threats, but by domestic enemies as well. Our enemies and the enemies of freedom and justice, although foreign and vile in their beliefs and sense of morality, are from outside and within, we the people of earth's great nations, and feign allegiance to the people. Their stated goal is to enslave Americans and eventually, the entire world, in order to return us to the backward and oppressive system of feudalism which Europeans and Westerners in general have long ago shunned. They do this so that they and their descendants can form a small class of elites which will rule over us all and control every aspect of our lives. In order to accomplish these goals, they have shown themselves to be more than willing to try anything and everything at their disposal, including the use of biological, chemical, and other forms of weapons with the stated aim of decreasing the population of mankind to more manageable levels. Therefore, our unalienable rights of life and health, liberty, freedom and autonomy, independence, self-security and self-defense, privacy, property, and the pursuit of happiness, are to be valued by all and available to all who desire such qualities. They shall be secured by governmental entities, instituted by the people, monitored by the people, and most importantly serve for the best interests of the people. At the present, our governments have forsaken their oaths, hence, the trust once afforded to our leaders has been destroyed as deception continues to pollute the once free air of our homeland. In consideration of the evolving state of affairs regarding the status of a free planet, the time has come for the good people of the world to disassociate themselves from the various branches of governmental agencies that no longer serves the best interests of themselves. 200 years after the American Revolution, the United States has once again fallen under power to a corrupt ruling oligarchy that has no regard for life and health, liberty, freedom and autonomy, independence, self-security and self-defense, privacy, property, and the pursuit of happiness, of its citizens, as so have countless number of other nations in total disregard to their people. In the new millennium, what we have instead is economic hardship, an evaporating middle class, war, deliberate misinformation through corporate-owned media outlets, voter fraud, and an evisceration of our cherished charters of rights and constitutions. All of this accomplished through stealth and secrecy by our leaders who have sworn to uphold our Constitution, but have instead demolished them for their own selfish interests and for the corporate interests of those whom they represent. Our leaders now break the law regularly and in almost every capacity with nearly no real fear of any kind of legal consequence. What we are stating today is both a formal grievance to our leaders that they have broken the naturally free people's vision for the universe, a vision we have all adopted through our socialization and by which the collective conscious of, for example, the United States, has amassed by the world's standard, the freest country founded until now, so far as in consideration of all civilizations preceding it, and a declaration that we are no longer interested in abiding by the standards of order that have enabled them to oppress their own people for personal gain and broaden their imperialistic horizons elsewhere. We are fully aware of the deliberate demise of such a great, constitutionally restrained, nation, and we are no longer interested in participating in the system of tyranny they are molding for the people of that great country, and others around the world. The scope of their infractions is enormous and crosses all generic boundaries of what ought to be standard in free nations, under the will of the people. Particularly powerful is the manipulation of information through the propaganda machine of the mainstream media. Key points of situations are regularly and deliberately left out to get the public to participate in their own demise of their countries. The use of mind control is much easier when the corporate-owned media controls the messages we are given. It is much easier to get the public to go along with condemning the Russian attack of Georgia if the media fails to tell the public that Georgia first attacked Russia. The deliberate misinformation coupled with deceptive semantics such as Homeland Security, Patriot Act, and net neutrality leaves the general public with an idea that these elements are actually good even though they might not have read the papers on such topics. The mainstream news media reporting propaganda of global domination and reporting this as fact combined with the creation of institutions and plans that are oppressive in nature but are tagged a name or term that is deceptive in essence as a part of the mental enslavement our government has fully participated in is only one part of the government's betrayal of its citizens. Using keywords over and over, terrorist, the enemy, Al-Qaeda, Osama bin Laden, radical Islam, insurgents, and so on has further enabled mindless groupthink to flourish and has stifled any kind of ability to rationalize and understand the current state of affairs. The shaping of public perception may not be an illegal activity in of itself, but the willingness of the government to exploit mind control for the personal agenda of the corporations, global bankers and various political persons of the world shows that there is no longer government for the people by the people. However, the collective perception they seek to shape regarding the illegal events they have created is where their real crime lie and where their most treasonous activities have occurred, activities that warrant us to overthrow the government. In order to survive, the time has come for us to reclaim our freedom. No more shall we suffer and be passive as our governments attempt to subjugate our civil liberties and natural freedoms. Our tolerance has been tested to its limit. To authenticate our speech, we will provide facts and evidence supporting any assertions so that you may bear witness to the upcoming liberation. The blood of our founding fathers and other ancestors once again screams for justice. The chains of tyranny they broke more than 200 years ago have been mended. The masses have long forgotten the pain of bondage, but the very idea of freedom cannot be taken from the most ignorant of men. All mankind has a universally endowed right and natural desire to live freely, to live life fully and to pursue happiness. Our representation has long been abolished through the corporate lobbyists who line the pockets of those who will do their bidding. Citizens of the American Republic and all other nations have the right to redress of grievances which have gone unanswered. When corruption and evil rules our nations, it is the right and duty of the citizens to effect the proper changes. The American Republic is crippled, but good men will not stand idle and watch it disintegrate. The founding fathers of the United States of America spoke of what should be done in times like these. It is expected that the citizens of the world's several nations resume and retain control of their governments. We are the leaders. We are the ones who are the deciders. Our elected leaders have lost their way. They have lost any semblance of the ideals in which, for example, the United States of America was founded. It is time once again to break these bonds before they are clenched so tight they suffocate our republic and the other several nations. Today is the day that we reclaim our independence. Today is the day we the people stand united and take back our right to life and health, liberty, freedom and autonomy, independence, self-security and self-defense, privacy, property, and the pursuit of happiness. With each passing generation, our elected representatives and their appointments have grown more brazen in their attempts to undermine our civil liberties, to destroy our natural rights and the principles of natural justice, as well as turn this country into a shell of its former self. Our nations have become little more than police states controlled by despots, and the minions who were elected are appointed to represent our best interests. We the people of the world, by the powers inherently vested in us, do hereby remove from office all representatives who have voted in favor of legislation that violates our natural rights or the principles of natural justice. Our freedoms have been destroyed by those who want to control us. Let the undeniable facts speak for themselves. In these troubled times we the free peoples of the world must declare our independence from principalities, powers, tyrants, and taskmasters. We are not looking to create a one-world government, but to declare our own independence in a universalized manner in which all people may plead their freedom in like kind. Under this document, and for our own selves, we desire to create our own individual country, independent of other governments or leagues of nations, leaving all other peoples free to establish their own free nations and self-governing political systems, as they may see fit. We reaffirm that these truths are still self-evident. All persons are created equal with unalienable, unchangeable rights. These rights are inherent to natural order and include life and health, liberty, freedom and autonomy, independence, self-security and self-defense and voluntarily securing and or defending others, privacy, property, and the pursuit of happiness. Nobody has the legitimate authority to grant, withhold or relinquish these rights. The task of government is to protect them. Any government that fails to do so loses its legitimacy, and it is the duty of the governed to replace it, peacefully or otherwise. Since the 1776 CE Declaration of Independence, and before, plans have been laid and put in motion for the total enslavement of the human race. Plans which are largely fulfilled. They call it the New World Order, and One World Government. The men and women who direct these plans have an ancient pedigree, of which they are inordinately proud. Their houses are steeped in the most wicked esoteric law and knowledge that they and their forefathers have been able to gather. These houses of robbery and murder hide themselves behind the laminated smiles of bought and paid for politicians and journalists. They sit in compounds surrounded by guards, protected from the world they believe they own and the chaos that their agents weave. They consider themselves safe from the justice that they deserve. They are statists, and in the grander scheme, the shadow world government, aka, the globalists, and they must be stopped. Our most devastating weapon is information. The crimes of the statists and globalists are multifarious. Their agents can be found behind almost every famine, pestilence, war, and untimely death. In recognition of the human condition, people are often forced to choose between their liberty and his security. However, neither can be achieved in and of its own right, lest the other be lost. Furthermore, knowing that security, in every single situation, can never be guaranteed at any cost, it is the right, obligation and duty for every man, woman, and child to strive for liberty in all its abundance, throwing off the yoke of those that would subjugate them in the name of peace, polished manners, and facades wrought with misconception. It is in this name of liberty, A universally endowed right, a paradox of the sapient to protect and augment in any means necessary, that we do hereby bring the following grievances to governments, corporations, and individuals who have appointed themselves in implementation of said security at home and throughout the world. Before all the world becomes a victim of the New World Order, its crimes past, present, and future must be revealed to anyone who will listen, and those who will not. They that would set their face against the statists and globalists must pick a crime and never let go, tear away the foundations of the pyramid and let the capstone fall and shatter. There are many crimes worth attacking, with each containing a cornucopia of lies, murder and theft all worthy of exposure. They have done the following crimes against the interests of our nations and their citizens in order to profit from the death and destruction and enslavement of the people they claim to serve, which, in keeping with the original Declaration of Independence by the people of the Republic of the United States of America in 1776 CE, we will list and outline our specific grievances below, which include the following. They have mocked the rule of law, weaponizing it against ordinary citizens while shielding the powerful from accountability. Innocent people are detained, impoverished, and arrested on flimsy or fabricated evidence, while those with connections or influence escape justice, eroding public trust in the legal system, our institution which was meant to be based upon law and not decree or edict, nor special preference or biased treatment. They have refused to uphold and defend constitutional laws, being the most wholesome and necessary for the public good. For taking away our charters, abolishing our most valuable laws, and fundamentally transforming the forms of our governments. For bypassing our own legislatures and making them obsolete in all cases whatsoever. They have taken action against their governors and individual states by throwing the full force of the Department of Justice against them. They have called together legislative bodies at places unusual, uncomfortable, and distant from their constituents, for the sole purpose of fatiguing them into compliance with their measures. They have openly thwarted the opinion of federal judges, pushing unconstitutional legislation through the system, ignoring the will of the people. They have kept among us invasive enforcement entities without the consent of the people, and which have uniformly violated our rights without prejudice upon the individual but have treated us as a whole to be their enemy. They have exposed the states to all the dangers of invasion from without, and convulsions within, pitting one against the other, especially in the case of illegal immigrant replacement population and undocumented migrant voting. They have excited domestic instability amongst us, and instilled agent provocateurs to try and further promote civil unrest and rioting or violence from what would otherwise be peaceful protests and public information campaigns. They have tried a diversity of different tactics from inciting race war, to attempting to assassinate populist candidates for office. They have endeavored to pervert the population of these states, for that purpose ignoring the laws for naturalization of foreigners, and refusing to pass comprehensive immigration reform. They have criminalized the modes of self-reliance and inhibited our capacity for attaining full independence, such as by criminalizing fishing and cannabis growing without a license when intended for personal use, and severely limiting our reasonable ability to use these modes of obtaining private property for engaging in free trade to maintain our sustenance and health, including when we impact no external ecosystem to proceed in such activities. For the unjust application and interpretations of existing laws which were designed and intended to protect liberty and rights wherever they may be found. Neither Congress nor the states are empowered to convert a right into a privilege, or a liberty into a license, charge a fee and limit, or deny them. Anything that is a right cannot be subject to conditions or licensing. Should Congress or any state convert a liberty right into a privilege, charge a fee and issue a license for it, we the people are free to ignore the license and fee and engage in the exercise of the right with impunity, irregardless of its status of security within the Constitution, or any other legal instrument. Manufactured consent, manufactured choice and conditioning through predictive programming are just the tip of the iceberg of the lies which are told to create this illusion of freedom. They have rendered what was once considered to be explicitly protected free speech to now be lawfully suppressible and punishable, through unconstitutionally vague or usurping statutes, such as to disorderly conduct, merely with probably cause of some other legally fictitious edictual crime, in order to show we the subjects we are ruled by masters with steel toes and iron fists with aluminum weapons shooting lead-penetrating projectiles, molesting and raping our persons and rights. The courts, when made aware of this blatant violation of the natural order, have turned up their noses and scoffed at our plight against the remainder of abusive powers at be. They have set precedents that oppress we the people, and incite us to excited plans of uprising and justifiable tumult against the numerous institutions of systemic injustice and progenities to such assault against our persons, properties, and other rights. Freedom of speech, once the backbone of the Renaissance, the revolutionary period of world history, and American culture, has been reduced to a privilege for the wealthy and well-connected. Through censorship by tech giants, government pressure, and corporate media collusion, alternative voices including independent health advocates and whistleblowers are silenced, and the public is denied access to vital information and debate. In their crusade in seeking to destroy free speech, they have suppressed the ability to exercise the right to speak freely, which is revered as a precious and rare gift. The globalists, including some of our own leaders in our states, are afraid of exposure. They must silence the awakened and lull those that are still asleep. Despite their free speech zones, hate laws, and control of corporate media through mechanisms such as through Operation Mockingbird of the CIA of the United States of America, they are still losing the information war. The free internet has made information easily accessible, but the clampdown has begun. Their long-planned Internet 2 is on the horizon, where they will set the agenda. Already, Google, along with their acquired video provider service of YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Reddit, have begun to erect an algorithmic system of rampant censorship and tyranny. These services were supposed to be, and were advertised to us as, platforms of equal opportunity to speak about what one felt was important to them. However, now people are being censored because their views do not align with the owners of such sites. Currently, at this point in time, this is where people are congregated most, so it is therefore important for these sites to value and uphold freedom of speech, since these sites are where people talk at, as well as the fact that speech is an unalienable right, which means it cannot be rightfully deprived from an innocent person, nor are they capable of being negotiated upon, surrendered, or transferred, or as otherwise, they are impossible to take away or give up. However, Anonymous and the techno-anarchist community are working hard to fortify the future of a free and open internet through projects like Operation Mesh, Friendica, and Cirex open source projects. The coalitions of governments from around the world have endeavored to prevent the construction of new Terra. For that purpose, they are guilty of obstructing the right to the creation of new nations. For both the globalists and the governments of the world creating a plan to depopulate the planet at expense of all of our lives. The government has embraced an anti-independent economic system, thus imposing on our personal, political, and economic freedoms. For financial tyranny, including tax savings through inflation caused by endless government debt and interest payments on the ever-increasing principal, and for the illegal and unconstitutional central private banking cabal of the several nations which continually works to the detriment of the persons throughout the world as individuals while working for the international banking interests to bankrupt the several nations of the world, and weaken them as a sovereign nations, as is intended under the will of their people, such as through the Federal Reserve private banking system here in the United States, which as of day one in the new 2025 CE Trump presidency Donald is working to rout out as a modern Andrew Jackson. They have subverted and eliminated sovereign currencies, via inflation and fiat, and not allowing said exchanges to be supported by anything of intrinsic and static value, doing so in coordination with financial institutions whose very purpose is the antithesis of liberty. They have instituted privately owned central banks which create fiat currency, loaning it to our government at interest, and in the case of the United States, created the unconstitutional national income tax in order to pay off this debt. For at least 3 months, or a minimum of 25% of every year, Americans and other citizens of the world work solely to fill the coffers of a small group of bankers, financial elite, and the governments of other nations, and yet our national debts are increasing and are unlikely to ever be paid off completely. They have implemented an illegal and unjust system for appropriating from the livelihoods of the people, a national income tax that steals earned income from each American as well as from citizens of other nations, under a false system that has been pushed as a legal and rightful one, but in fact is not actually declared by law. Income is the private property of an individual, and the national income tax works hand in hand with the private central banking cartel of earth to enrich the traders who are feeding off of the well-meaning peoples of the world to bring the individual sovereignties of earth to a full collapse, to bring in a one-world system. For immense public spending that has brought us to the edge of financial oblivion, whereas they will spend trillions of dollars on bills they pass, we the people are left to struggle day to day with expenses, living paycheck to paycheck, barely able to get our essential needs taken care of even though we work hard for our money. Capitalism and big business has been used as a loophole by politicians to obtain more wealth. And on the other end of the spectrum, it has been used by big business to lobby to obtain more wealth. The Gulf of Kuwait and Iraq wars enabled oil and prescription opiate companies to lobby the government to obtain more stock, in turn making politicians and shareholders profit. The last stage of capitalism is imperialism, and corporations who engage in it manipulate the idea of a free society in order to engage in depravity and predation against the environment, animals, and persons, then suffer the deleterious effects of such a business person's destructive activities. The people of the world are not tools to obtain wealth and should not be treated as such. Creating ideas that separate us for wealth is harmful and it hurts the relationships we build with one another. Ongoing property right violations cannot be tolerated. The people of the world should be secure in times where we are all at risk. The people of the world should not be preyed upon by the system, government, nor by business special_interests. During the beginning of the Fauci-funded NIH-China Cooperation Lab leaked 2019 Wuhan novel coronavirus SARS-CoV-2 pandemic, there was a large wealth transfer from middle-class families and small businesses to big businesses, and certain sectors of the economy profited enormously at the cost of smaller mom-and-pop and son-daughter brick-and-mortar businesses having to board up their doors and windows to close down, and housing prices soar as a housing shortage is exacerbated by evictions because people simply do not have the money anymore to even rent, let alone purchase their own house they own in full without mortgage. This wealth transfer proves there was a violation of property rights, as most lost jobs and the use of big business services means the loss of millions of homes and property because of this wealth transfer. The government, big business, and the globalists have begun eating out the financial substance of the people, going against the benefit of the people, with the government's taxes, fines, fees, swarms of bureaucrats, big businesses' antitrust and anti-liberty actions censoring financial payments to undesirables who are usually dissidents, corporate special welfare which itself goes against the general welfare, mega-merging and monopolistic behavior to raise the bottom line at the expense of consumers of resources products, and the globalists and Rothschildian superpowers centralizing all control of financial markets under ever larger private-controlled public grasp and command. They seek to destroy the middle class, and prevent new elites from arising to challenge them. They gather money from the people, often the least able to pay, at the point of a gun and lavish it on corporate welfare and foreign wars, for the unjust restrictive regulation of business and commerce, without a demonstrable risk of danger to the general welfare from them, and to the levy of any taxation suffered by said commerce, without equally proving a compelling and legitimate governmental interest. For imposing taxes on us without our consent, even in the case where we do consent, and for imposing taxes on the rest whom do not consent unanimously to the same. Taxes have been raised under the guise of public good, yet the proceeds are squandered on bureaucratic excess, private luxuries, and the resettlement of migrants without due process or transparency. Meanwhile, the middle class is squeezed, small businesses are shuttered, and the national debt spirals out of control, mortgaging the future of our children. Successive administrations of those holding office have entrenched and expanded subsidies and corporate welfare for the largest industries and financial elites, with federal business aid now totaling over $181 billion annually as of the year 2025 CE. These policies have disproportionately benefited the richest corporations and wealthiest farm owners, distorting the market and burdening ordinary Americans with the costs, while leaving small businesses and family farms at a disadvantage. The government has repeatedly imposed price controls and regulatory interventions on agricultural products and other goods, undermining the dynamics of a free market. Such measures have led to shortages, inefficiencies, and reduced incentives for innovation, contradicting the principles of a minimally regulated, laissez-faire economy. Each administration has contributed to a growing web of regulations, often exceeding what is necessary to protect public welfare. These excessive rules have increased compliance costs, stifled entrepreneurship, and restricted economic liberty, further moving the nation away from the ideals of a free and open marketplace. The government, at least of the United States, has confiscated and corrupted logic to falsely justify stealing our gold and silver money to finance its endless tyrannical endeavors. Career politicians have fucked us, and fucked us hard at that, because they think serving in a position of civil duty is a job in which they should make a career, when truly, it is not. The idea of these positions is to help the American and other peoples of the world, not help the public servant's financial situation. Because of their greed they do things out of the motivation to make more money, consequences be accursed for greed. Tampering with free and fair elections and corrupting the administration of justice, they have conspired to violate the equal rights of voters, for example, the 1965 CE Voting Rights Act of the United States of America, and tailored the Department of Justice as a personal strongman for their agendas. For ongoing corruption of the voting process is represented by governmental involvement in voting fraud, such as evidenced in the United States of America by Diebold and Dominion voting systems in their programmable voting outcome. This means that, for example, the people of the United States no longer have confidence that their will shall be known and their voice shall be heard. This criminal infringement ensures criminal government power holders can continue to see to it that only their chosen few get and maintain power. The governments have announced their intent to violate our constitutions, and the laws made under it, with signing statements. They have unlawfully detained and restricted individuals based on economic status, addiction, and immigration status, all while failing to address the root causes of these crises. Instead of offering real solutions, they perpetuate cycles of poverty and dependency, using the justice system as a tool of social control rather than rehabilitation. The government has refused to be transparent with regards to secret meetings and declarations. Various legislatures of the world are prohibited from even reading certain measures that outline government structure. The government of our origin nation, the United States of America, has declared a dictatorship in the form of various edicts established over time, some of which are releasing the president and his subordinates from any liability for having suspended habeas corpus without congressional approval, Executive Orders 6102 and 6814 enacted to steal the money owned and held by millions of Americans, Defense Production Act of 1950 CE, OSHA 1970 CE, Emergency Temporary Standards, for mandatory forced vaccination or testing in order to pursue work in 2021 CE 2022 CE, the Uniting and Strengthening America by Providing Appropriate Tools Required to Intercept and Obstruct Terrorism, USA Patriot Act of 2001 CE, the Military Commissions Act of 2006 CE, Presidential Decision Directive 51 of 2007 CE, the John Warner Defense Authorization Act of 2007 CE, and the National Defense Authorization Act of 2012 CE that allows the President absolute power to arrest, detain, and torture American citizens of the United States without their being informed of any criminal charges, without a trial on the merits of those charges, and without a scintilla of the due process safeguards protected by the Constitution of the United States, as well as countless other examples in deprivation of their rights according to the law of the land under the Constitution, etc. For the abuses by, and dictatorial power claimed for, the presidents of the United States and other leaders of the world in the form of myriad signing statements that are contrary to the provisions established in, for example, the previous, original Constitution of the United States, and show a blatant disregard for the legitimate checks and balances established to limit power and prevent such tyranny. The government has combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution and unacknowledged by our laws, giving assent to their acts of pretended legislation. Furthermore, through mass surveillance and digital censorship, they have suppressed alternative health information and natural remedies, as reported by independent health advocates. Central banks and globalist institutions have debased the currency, transferred wealth from Main Street to Wall Street, and concealed the true extent of public debt, as documented by economic watchdogs. These actions have further eroded personal liberty, bodily autonomy, and the American dream. For a long-standing time, the Democrats and Republicans, two faces of the same coin, have conspired to entrench their own power, have caused numerous and frightening usurpations, setting the stage for the public to divide amongst themselves, and have instilled the mentality that voting for alternatives never works, therefore you should not vote for them, thereby eliminating any possibility of such alternative arising for the benefit of the lives and affairs of our people, systematically undermining the emergence of any viable third party. Through ballot access barriers, media collusion, and campaign finance manipulation, they have ensured the American people are trapped in a false dichotomy, stoking division and preventing true representation or reform. For the perpetuation of false dichotomies, granting only cursory evidence in political arenas to multiple viewpoints, in reality only agreeing when advantageous by means of furthering power and dominance. For being unduly directed by small elite interests. The false left-right Democrat, Republican, liberal, conservative choices paraded in front of the good people of the world are in general serving the same interests, with little exception or choice to true representation of the people whom they are intended to serve. The same elite interests utilize their controlled mass media propaganda and voting manipulation to attempt to keep true champions of the people of the world and their just institutions from obtaining office. Both parties have declared themselves the sole legitimate holders of power, demonizing and criminalizing dissent. The events of January 6 have been used as a pretext to label political opposition as insurrection, expand surveillance, and justify unprecedented crackdowns on civil liberties, setting a dangerous precedent for the suppression of future movements. The government has propagated the ideas that separate us the most: race war, class warfare, culture war, cancel culture, and political divide. The government has erected a multitude of new offices by a self-assumed power, established large bodies of armed members in government among us from various compartments, employ the multitude of czars, and sent hither swarms of such officers to harass our people and the people of the world and eat out their substance. The government has militarized law enforcement and officers of other offices. The militarization of the local and state police have resulted in policies that encourage officers to abuse their power and violate the rights and humanity of the citizens who are supposed to be protected by the power entrusted to them. Instead, the citizens of the world are increasingly subjected to tyranny as we see the various nations morphing rapidly into a police state serving the ruling elite foreign and domestic private interests at the expense of the citizenry. For the intrusions repeatedly executed by corrupt officers of peace, whether conscripted or hired, and their malicious intent by demonstrable means to foment an atmosphere of fear and panic among the governed, and for obstructing our natural right to resist these unlawful actors, with or without the use of defensive force. The government has protected law enforcement and military forces by a mock trial from punishment for any murders they should commit on us and the inhabitants of the world. The government has failed to disclose information on acts of terrorism, both at home and abroad, although truth is a fundamental belief that should be shared and practiced by all citizens of the world. The government has affected to render law enforcement and the military independent of and superior to the civil power. The government of our origin nation, and of many other nations have either directly, or by essence, violated the Posse Comitatus Act, or its operating principle against a standing army, including through the militarization of police. They have repeatedly invoked international law and secretive treaties to justify wars of aggression, deceiving the public about their motives and outcomes. From Vietnam and Iraq to Afghanistan and the ongoing involvement in Ukraine and Israel, these conflicts have been waged with little to no genuine public consent, enriching defense contractors and globalist interests while costing countless lives and trillions of dollars. The globalists have fomented war for financial and political advantage. To them, war is a great game, its victims are nothing more than pieces on a chessboard. They have set us against each other on innumerable occasions waiting to exploit the exhaustion and horror of the survivors to advance their new world order. In addition, they have profited, and allowed their minions to profit, from the carnage of war. From selling arms to and financing both sides of a conflict, to supplying defective equipment, they have betrayed the soldiers they so piously and publicly declare their support for. For the unwarranted and continued execution of world conflict, often guided by derelict actions of the executioners. For posing as saviors when they were really wolves in sheep's clothing and even pedophiles in high office trying to protect their buddies. For misleading the people of Earth and members of our various states to believe various countries throughout history posed imminent threats. For assailing us, as in we the people, in the streets and in our homes and punishing us for our lawful yet outlawed rightful defense. Executing terror upon the public in order to maintain community demands for cause stalkers who are neighbors and bystanders that are choosing the path of a busybody to create hell for the individual. They have force medicated and even injected with chemical cocktails and questionable pharmaceutical agents merely for declaring our independence and right of revolution against usurpers and despots and all other forms of tyranny while in the confines of an asylum. In our defense against these common criminals with badges and titles of office, we have been persecuted continuously and rendered convicted insanely by the court of public opinion as enemies to the state that must be monitored and managed by handlers appointed under the direction of the corrupt courts which work in tandem with the corrupt law enforcement. By privatizing and corporatizing prisons and mental health, as well as secretly experimenting on the people receiving services therein, institutions, they have prioritized profit and control over people, fueling a surge in homelessness, economic despair, suicide, and crime. The prison industrial complex, as exposed by independent journalists, thrives on high incarceration rates and recidivism, with little regard for genuine rehabilitation or public safety. For the war on drugs that destroyed the lives of so many people and which diverted the course of the future from a world where farmers may grow crops without fear and consumers may consume quality products available with checks and balances over the counter for adults and those with qualifying medical condition. The government has cooperated with big corporations to purposely poison the living hell out of the food, water and air, all on record. They are purposely targeting our children. They are purposely sowing division and racism in the name of fighting it, following a blueprint to destroy cohesion and peace, in addition to our prosperity. They are forces of evil. We cannot underestimate how about they are. Their success is only because some have been asleep and naive. Evil's success dissipates very quickly when the public is aware and willing to participate in fighting it and supporting those who are resetting the entire system back to the way it should be in favor of the people, going against the world ending by the hands of the megalomaniacs. For the government working hand in hand with big tobacco, big food, and big pharma, green lighting the addition of more than 10,000 chemicals in our day-to-day products which keep us sick and reliant upon dirty goods which damage the health of our people in generations to come, meanwhile burying research and prohibiting the honest advertising of natural remedies and supplements and healthy alternatives to junk food and highly processed food substitutes. From fluoride to atrazine in the water, from mutagenic crop dusting and genetically engineered experiments deployed on the public, aspartame and sodium benzoate, in addition to every other number of engineered ingredient and additive that does not serve but detriment the benefit of mankind, that for which despite the purpose of government to protect consumers and the environment, such compounds have been given protected status by the prior government and prevented litigation against those who are poisoning our bodies and even our minds and spirits with their manufactured products, putting profits over people. For developing secretive programs and technologies for covert deployment against the American public and the people of the world, such as psychotronic weapons, nanoparticulates, population control AI, as well as weather manipulation and geoengineering systems. For developing the fields of psychological warfare and mind control. For experimenting upon the public and covering up their wrongdoing, in total violation of the Nuremberg Code and all standard decency that one should expect but will not receive from our past and present government as well as the status quo at large. For the government's numerous infringements against our rights to keep and bear arms, disarming our population and criminalizing essentially harmless acts because of their connection to a firearm, as well as infringing against our rights of self-defense with said arms. The government has infringed on our pre-political natural rights as people. They have waged a war against the liberties of the citizens of these nations, and the several nations of the world, through countless new laws and other forms of legislation being passed which infringe upon the natural-born rights of all persons. These new laws now grant our government the ability to set up illegal checkpoints in our streets and search the homes of citizens without a warrant, which is a clear violation of, for example, the Fourth Amendment to the United States Constitution. They also have the ability to monitor all sorts of information regarding the daily lives of ourselves, including what books we check out from the library, what we do while using the internet, what we say while speaking on telephones or cell phones, among various other things which are too numerous to list. We the citizens of the several nations of humankind have become slaves within our own countries. And, lest we think this is the end of government interference and control over our lives, there are even more dangerous laws and technologies on the horizon, all designed to further enslave and oppress us. Many governments now possess the technological ability to implant microchips and nano-machines inside all individuals within their country and track their every movement, every financial transaction, and even their every thoughts, anywhere around the world, as well as various other devices and plots which they have devised in order to see us further enslaved. Their policies have invited chaos, insurrection, and injustice, breaking the very foundation laid by our forefathers. Any attempt to challenge or reform this corrupt system is met with threats of detention, economic ruin, or even the destruction of one's livelihood and reputation, leaving many in despair or forced into silence, or even unalived by their hand or another's, due to the depravity. The government's and the globalists' capacity to wreak the above havoc, and more, is dependent on the willingness of others to serve them. If the members of the public body and economic superpowers refuse to perform these corrupted acts, then there would be nothing to fight them for. There is significant evidence that these are all behaviors that the representatives of our government have participated in. The lack of fervor over our legislatures to address these probable infractions of the law proves them to be a complicit part of our government. With an unruly executive and an impotent legislature, the judicial branch of government is, in effect, rendered futile. In every stage of these oppressions we have petitioned for redress in the most humble terms. Our repeated petitions have been answered by repeated injury. Rule of whose character is thus marked by every act which may define tyranny, is unfit for a people who mean to be free. Future ages will scarce believe that the hardiness of these institutions, adventured on so many acts of tyranny without a mask, over a people steeped, fostered and fixed in principles of liberty. Throughout the course of these oppressions many of us were ignorant to the fact that our leaders were engaged in such atrocities. Some of us feared knowing the truth and instead negated the facts as a defense mechanism to mask our disappointment. Among the few, however, the truth was transparent as we wrestled against the pressures of conformity with the status quo. Yet we persevered, and we will no longer allow our governments to be deaf to the voice of justice nor dilatory in amending the current state of our nations. The people should never fear their government, instead, the government should fear its people. We are the ultimate keepers of our homeland. Governments are an instrument instituted and intended to secure the rights of people, and derive their just powers from the consent of the governed, and the public pacts in which they form. All power of governance is inherent in the people. The sole object and only legitimate end of government is to protect each citizen in the enjoyment of life and health, liberty, freedom and autonomy, independence, self-security and self-defense, privacy, property, and the pursuit of happiness. When the government assumes other functions, this becomes unjust usurpation and oppression, which has of course been our observation over the great number of years. Our government has circumvented the legitimate civil purposes it was created and meant to stand for, and the restrictions the people have placed upon it to defend themselves from manifest despotism and slavery. The government is not for the people. We demand for governance that supports and cares for its people, instead of one that gives the people's plundered money to its own members and special interests both in our nation as well as in foreign countries. In consideration of the above, we are to abolish the government as it exists. If we are to continue as independent and free nations of liberty and justice for all, we cannot cooperate with tyrannical governments that have established a basis in numerous different countries, that which stage false flag terror on its own citizens, has enforced unjust taxes on the labor of the individuals of their nations, acts against the best interests of its citizens through secret meetings and trade agreements, and that fraudulently allows for a private bank to issue the national currency. Currently our once great nations' reputations are plagued with war, where our leaders have sent our impoverished and poor to fight the impoverished and poor of other nations. While the media acts as the propaganda machine to manipulate the commoner into mindless groupthink, the true sons and daughters of liberty recognize the fraud and deceit the media and our politicians have willingly perpetrated on the world and the war they intend to wage on all of humanity. This is the battle of good versus evil. Good will prevail. To our cowardly tyrannical leaders, who rule behind the curtain in their cloak with their poisoned daggers, and their obedient and willing servants, which are our politicians, who are only slightly less cowardly but every bit as disingenuous, the greater number of beings in the universe are on our side. Knowing this, we fear nothing. In the end, all will be revealed. There will be no hiding. We are prepared to pay the ultimate price, for if we are not, we have no chance of reclaiming mankind's self-autonomous nature. You are not our gods, nor our kings and queens, nor lords, nor masters. We know our destiny. Liberty bestowed upon us by nature cannot be stifled by the control psychopaths whose delusions of grandeur have led them to their mad quest of deification. We have confidence in the victory of good and triumph over evil. Due to all of the above violations and numerous others, we the citizens of these several nations of the world declare our independence from this corrupt and tyrannical government and affirm our natural-born rights to life and health, liberty, freedom and autonomy, independence, self-security and freedom of securing others, and self-defense and freedom to defend others, privacy, property, and the pursuit of happiness, which our forefathers fought and sacrificed for in order to secure a future of which for us. Our stated aim is to return to our founding principles and to create a new country where elected representatives serve the best interests of the people and uphold our natural rights and natural justice. We shall pursue this difficult but noble quest to the best of our abilities so that one day we and our descendants can experience true freedom and justice. As long as we remain true to our cause, we shall not suffer defeat because we have within us the capability to see our nations become free and prosperous once again, or otherwise to become further enslaved and destroyed. For just as Abraham Lincoln once said, America will never be destroyed from the outside. If we falter and lose our freedoms, it will be because we destroyed ourselves. Therefore, whether we choose the path to freedom and justice or the path to turmoil and oppression is within our own control. We can choose to lay back and allow a small group of bankers, politicians, and financial elite oppress us, or we can resist and once again reclaim our natural-born rights and free our nation from all threats both foreign and domestic. Because humanity always desires freedom over oppression, there is no doubt that the good people of the world will resist in order to secure their rights and take back control of their great nations. We the people of the world do now declare our rights to end these unjust and thereby an illegitimate forms of government that are currently in place and destroying our lives through the above-mentioned treasonous and tyrannical activities. The government is no longer for the people, it is run by and for elite private interests, and this fascist military industrial technological labor academic managerial political regime must be stopped immediately. Our various nations' checks and balances of power have been defeated with the use of continual corruption, bribery, and a systematic overthrow of our legal and proper forms of government. Criminal agents who are representing their international banking interests now run the government for the small circle of financial elite and against the good people of the United States as well as the world at large. We must now install legitimate governments that protect the people with sound financial policies and with a dissolution of the unjust private central banking authority, as well as national income tax which is paid directly to them, both of which themselves are two obscene entities that work against the best interests of the people and instead work for the private banking interests and their government agents who have been abusing the power which we the people have entrusted them with. We demand that our men and women, if they are so dispatched, return from the illegal occupation of the Middle East on behalf of the same international banking interests, and that world political policy returns to a policy of non-intervention, a return to trade policies that protect and benefit local industry rather than puts local industry out of any fair chance to survive and prosper, as we have seen under the unjust policies that have proven to be a deadly cancer upon the laissez-faire free market independent economic system. It is our intent, at whatever cost necessary, to return ourselves to systems of government bound to serve and protect the people, as well as adhere to the social contracts which bind such systems. Whether our previous system of governance really be one thing, or another, this much is certain, that it has either authorized such abuses as we have had, or has been powerless to prevent them. In either case it is unfit to exist. We, the citizens of the world, and in concert with the citizens of the United States of America, hereby declare our independence from those principalities set upon us by some of the evils of this universe, be they individual, corporate, or political. We reserve the right, and as basic a right as we can be able, to enjoin ourselves in self-governance, and thereby chose to bestow ourselves respect towards our original endowment of liberty as a birthright. We swear by the blood of our parents and their parents before them, that no person should be in bondage, however comfortable and secure that bondage may seem, for it is in the mere state of uncomfortability that the greatest of success in any arena can be achieved. We claim this right for ourselves, our descendants, and for all those who choose to live as we do, and we choose to defend this right by any means reasonably necessary and sufficient. The sovereignty of our thoughts, our decisions, our destinies, lay within us and only us, and are not subject to the whim of any entity, no matter what bulwark they hide behind. We recognize our own justifications in every situation, and that we ultimately have one universe, and that what we do in our lives will reflect on what we will answer for to the rest in the universe when we face our decisions. We undertake this oath, whether under the belief in a creator or not, in whatever form we choose to believe, to the very ideals of the way a person's life was intended. It is the obligation under natural law, to obey natural rights and justice, that humankind alone should cleave. The original intent of the Founding Fathers of the United States in creating a constitution which was itself based on a text long regarded as the sole passage to eternity, and therefore these men modeled the documents they penned after what was in this tome they considered sacred above all things. Lest men forget, that this same document upheld liberty to or not to worship, the wholeness both of the family and of self, coupling this idea with the single paramount virtue, love thy neighbor as thyself. It is from this document, that a government forged in singular purpose, lasting through conflict, division and reunification, on the backbone steadfastly of what it meant to be a human being. Unequivocally and irrevocably, all men are certainly not only are created equal, but are entitled to keep such equality in the most transparent manner, irregardless of events both internal and external. We furthermore recognize that government is an ironclad instrument of humankind, and that the words that produce the backbone of said governance should not be subject to any interference from the way it was originally manifest, thereby ensuring its own place in the hearts of those who long for the ways of their own choosing. Every word, clear and bold in presentation, must reflect the light of destiny and self-determination. Devoid of prejudice, and reproached in transparency ad infinitum, the government must always serve the interests of liberty, of one man, and of all men. Therefore, we, the good people of the world, do, in the name and by authority of the good people of this planet, reject and renounce all allegiance and subjection to the rulers of the several nations of man and all others who may hereafter claim by, through, or under them. We utterly dissolve and break off all political connection which may have heretofore subsisted between us and the people or nations of the world. And finally we do assert and declare our own person as to be a free and independent people, leaving all others to form their own independent systems of government as to them they shall think most proper, and that our free and independent states shall hereafter have power to do all those acts and things which independent states may, of right through the people, do. For the support of this declaration, we the people mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our inviolable honor, to always assist in the defense of freedom and prosperity, which we hold most dearly to our hearts and minds. We, freely born, living, thinking, learning, and creating, being, would like to formally announce that we revoke our consent to be governed by anybody other than our own personal self, in conformity to the unalienable natural rights and justice. We choose to redeclare and re-establish our popular sovereignty. We are the ultimate authority of our governments and our planet. We expect and demand that our governments will abandon secrecy and deception and accept truth and integrity. We reject the status quo and are united in our pursuit to bring into fruition the constitutional and foundational precepts of our planned great nation. We, sovereign persons of this world, do declare that we will no longer be the slaves of those that would rule us by force. We will no longer sit idle while our fellow human beings are subjected to oppression and tyranny. We will stand united with those that support the idea that all individuals are sovereign and equal, that being controlled by disinformation, deception, coercion, compulsion, and aggression force is contrary to human dignity. No longer will we submit to wars, taxes, subjugation through slave wages, propagandistic educational systems, deceptive media, private monetary systems, lying, unaccountable representation in communal matters, nor any other contracts we have not personally approved as individuals. We pledge that we will not resort to the tactics of our enemies, but will resist by non-compliance to the directives of those trying to rule over us or in any way otherwise attempt to be our master. We will make our decision known by speaking out to all who will listen. No longer shall we let any undermine our freedoms. We proclaim each one of our natural and customary rights to be inviolable and unsusceptible to any justifiable or legalized form of debasement, with an eternal promise from we the people, to defend such liberties at any cost to our enemy or ourselves, so that we may remain independent and our autonomy to live and thrive is preserved for ourselves and or our offspring. Nations, as well as individuals, are amenable for their acts to the public opinion of mankind. A statement of a part of our grievances is therefore submitted to an impartial world, in justification of the hazardous but unavoidable step now taken, of severing our political connection with the current form of government, and assuming an independent attitude among the nations of the earth. It is time to reclaim our rights, restore honest governance, and make the world great again by returning power to the people, securing our freedoms, and ensuring that government serves the governed, not the ruling elite. Our planned society of free people under the universe, which shall be from here on after be promoted for the model governance for which the United States is destined to eventually become, shall conceive and deliver a new birth of freedom, furthermore will ensuring that its secular our government of the people, by the people, and for the people, shall not perish from the earth. We do also invite all other persons and nations to follow suit in promoting the spirit of liberty, freedom and autonomy within all of their own endeavors. Finally, a message to the willing servants and puppets of the New World Order who will not, or cannot, be cured. You will not take our rights, nor will your masters. You may succeed in violating them for a short time, but the stroke of a pen or the muzzle of gun cannot muster the power to abolish our unalienable rights, and we shall still possess them infinitely and eternally even if you fail to acknowledge it. For the sake of your family, friends and infinitely recurring existences in this universe, turn away from wrongdoing. There will be no reward, only the bottomless pit that also awaits your dark masters. The people of earth have ordained that we shall be free. You cannot stand against the power of we the people and the true good progress we have so deliberately strived for and diligently worked to achieve on our planet. The numerous and unceasing violations against us which have, are, and may furthermore come to bear down upon us must themselves cease, or else it is only rightful that be resisted to their end, by any means necessary and sufficient to secure our rights, aiming those include, but are not limited to, life, health, liberty, freedom and independence, autonomy, sovereignty, security and safety, defense, as well as happiness, and to reduce all inefficiencies as much as humanly possible while not sacrificing their obligation to declare and enforce only our natural rights and duties, and to take none of them from us, which is the credence by which the motto of protect and serve is primarily and intrinsically derived. So say us one, so say us all. Sincerely, for the future of the world, for which I have worked on, is mine. Ghost Liberty, the original Night Slayer, founder of Operation Greenway and the Cascadia plan of Project 2028. Note these definitions and clarifications are written in logical order, not in order of importance, and in some cases were written directly towards a reader's person. Understanding all of these definitions and clarifications is essential to understanding the intention of this rebuttal. *1 CE is the proper representation of AD. *2 We the people means the people as according to the Constitution of the United States based on the Declaration of Independence. *3 Natural person, and individual, all equally refer to the title inherent for any true intelligence, from whom the disposition is considered to be at or beyond sapient, residing within a body, entity, complex, or vessel, machine, vehicle, whether of biologic, mechologic, chemologic, crystallogic, electrologic, magnetologic, electromagnetologic, plasmalogic, or warp-8 logic root, or a combination of them, whether Gaia Terra Geo Telor, Exo Astro Xeno Extraterra, or classical quantum string computational logic, whether naturally, spontaneous or engineered synthetically occurring. All legal person are natural persons. This definition does not extend to for-profit corporations, limited liability companies, or other artificial entities established for business purposes or to promote business interests under the laws of any state, the United States, Greenway, or any foreign state, and such commercial entities established under law are inherently subject to such regulation as the people, through their elected state and federal representatives in the legislative process, or by power of referendum and/or initiative, shall themselves deem reasonable, and are otherwise consistent with the powers of government under the Constitution and which do not limit the freedom of speech or the press. Asterisk 4. Law is that which secures the rights of individuals by restraining the violation of such rights, which violations are known collectively as injustice, promoting their exercise equitably to everyone's advantage, even benefiting those who are least capable or wealthy, or both, so that all are better off, by strategic development and implementation of legislation, known as policy, and to declare as well as enforce the natural duties of persons, namely the duty to submit to the umpirage of an impartial third party between oneself and another or others unless none be the better decider, then each one should judge for themselves, and the duty to rebel against unjust laws, known as edicts, orders known as subjection, and actions known as oppression, which are any of those laws, orders, or actions that are contrary to, devaluate, or which do violate any rights or interfere with the administration of justice, which collectively comprises tyranny. The purpose of the law is to protect innocent parties from being victimized by the actions of others. If the law does anything else, it becomes a set of meaningless rules that have no real basis. The government creating and prosecuting victimless crimes as malfeasance, the unjust performance of prosecution which the government has no righteous power, and which was contracted with them through the Constitution to not do, voids the social contract, and automatically invokes and provokes a revolution against such an usurping and oppressing government. If at any point a human law deflects from the law of nature, it is no longer a law but a perversion of law. True laws in code, or in the elast, do not obstruct rights to any degree, but rather encode and respect them in others, and enable actions that do not obstruct the same. In order for legislators to hold office, they are to be sufficiently apprised of the rightful limits of their power, and that their true office is to declare and enforce only our natural rights and duties, and to take none of them from us, and if they are to deflect from this just purpose, and become corrupted, then not only do the people have an objectively immoral responsibility to disobey any and all unjust laws, but if a law is unjust as no law at all, and a person is not only right to disobey it, they are obligated by their nature to do so. The very existence of unjust laws is a crime against the people, and their constitution, any who tailor them, authorize them, or enforce them, are direct threats to the people, and as such, are enemies of their country people. Asterisk 5. Order is the maintenance of peace, tranquility by protecting persons in their daily lives and in the course of their ordinary business, free from interference or the legitimate fear of true harm or injury to rights from others. It also denotes a sense of stability, repose from tumultuous upheaval, and a reasonable level of public security, as well as maintaining acceptable conduct or basic decency, propriety through regulations that protect the general public's health and safety, as according to the powers and limitations according to this Constitution and state constitution in concordant to it as well. Asterisk 6. Justice is the set and constant purpose which gives every person their due, either to be left alone, to be punished, or to be given remedy. It is the system by which people and their causes are judged, particularly a system which conforms to a moral principle, like the equality mutual to all of humankind, persons, and that every person is universally endowed by nature with fundamental and unalienable human individual rights, such as life and health, liberty, freedom and autonomy, independence, self-security and the freedom to secure others, and self-defense and the freedom to defend others, privacy, property, and the pursuit of happiness. The only time rights may be taken away are in individual cases to stop the would-be violator from violating the equal rights of others, or to punish such violations, with the specific sentences being moderated and proportional, with specific punishment tailored to reflect upon the needs of the public for protection against criminal transgressors, serving to guard the community against recidivism, while serving to at all times achieve sensible outcomes to everyone involved. Justice must be impartial and fair as well as reasonable and not arbitrary or capricious in its delivery, netting no further injury to the innocent, nor cruel, unusual, or excessive punishment to the guilty who violate law or order. Justice in the purest sense is easily definable as enforcing the natural rights and restituting for damages when possible, and something is just if it does not infringe upon the rights of others. Justice is the rule of right, and whatever is contrary to the rule of right is an injury. Justice seeks to provide a remedy for all injuries. Not every loss produces an injury. A person who stands on their own rights injures no one. Justice is the rule of right, and whatever is contrary to the rule of right is an injury. Justice seeks to provide a remedy for all injuries. 7. Natural tranquility. Peace is a state in which each person does, towards every other, all that justice requires them to do, to be liable for debts, losses, and injuries to another's rights such as their person, labor, or property. It is where each person abstains from doing to another anything which justice forbids them to do. They must not violate the rights of another. The violation of any of these conditions constitutes a state of natural war until justice is re-established. 8. Terrorism shall be defined to mean unjust intimidation or violence constituting an act of true aggression employed for political purpose, particularly when intimidation, violence is used by a government against its or another country's citizenry. It does not include activities which defend the rights, immunities, freedoms, privileges, or guarantees of the people or persons. XYZ